Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Odds and Ends for Monday, September the 20th. Another football week in the books, and in the book, if you will, another set of interesting results across college football and the NFL. I'm Zach Ewing, sports betting and gaming director for bet.nola.com, along with Jim Derry. And first of all, Jim, we ought to announce, I guess it's already been announced, but we can kind of go inside information here. Bet.nola.com has officially partnered with Caesars Sportsbook. We're very excited to announce that, and that's going to improve our coverage a lot. We've got to be able to get a lot of information from Caesars, get it a little bit faster, ask questions that y'all want asked, that sort of thing about what's going on in the sports betting world, who's putting money on what lines, that sort of thing. Even some special promotions, some special prop bets could be in the offing. We'll see, but we're excited about it.
No question. And, I'm thrilled about it because, I've been going through their site, and I think they have the best site for looking at lines and going through and finding futures. And I've been really pleased with just going through them and using them for the past 2 or 3 weeks since we've done this. And I'm excited about our partnership as well. It's definitely going to bring us an influx of people who are interested in getting into the whole new gaming thing.
Yeah, and for those who are asking the $1 million question, when can we bet? I know I keep getting that question over and over and over again.
Me too.
And the answer is still somewhat arbitrary. They're hoping in-person sports betting can begin by the end of September, and then mobile betting will be a couple of weeks behind that. That's a separate license, so they have to get approved for in-person first and then get approved for mobile. But we're thinking halfway through football season, you'll be able to sit down on a Saturday morning or Sunday morning on your phone and make your bets on the Caesars Sportsbook app or whatever app it is that you choose. But I agree with you wholeheartedly, Jim. It's a very user-friendly app. It's a very intuitive system, and I think people are really going to like it. And so we're excited for that partnership. I think we just had the graphic flash up on the screen there, but let's show that again. If you want all the information and all the latest things that we write and all the lines and all of the shows and all of that, the best way to do that is to sign up for our newsletter. It's nola.com/odds. Put in your email address, as easy as that, nola.com/odds. And if you do it today, you can be entered for a $250 cash card giveaway just for signing up, just for putting your email in and getting that newsletter in your inbox 6 times a week. And you can choose to open it one day and not the next day. No pressure. Look at what we've got to offer that day and what we're writing about. But certainly seems to me worth it to enter for the $250 just to put in your email address. So go ahead and do that at nola.com/odds.
And Zach, the word is, I'm hearing from up above that if you win the $250 gift card, you are allowed to throw that towards my big bucks total so I don't look like a fool. That's just a rumor. I don't know if that's really true or not.
That's fake money versus real money, so we're going to have to talk to the lawyers about that. But
right.
We might be able to set up some sort of GoFundMe for Jim Derry's Big Bucks fund.
Can we do GoFundMes for virtual money?
Sure, man. Here's $1 million of virtual money. We're not talking about Bitcoin, but I'll contribute to the fund.
Not.
What Jim is talking about is our Big Bucks game, where I think if you win tonight's game, you're actually only down a couple dollars for the week. So it wasn't a disaster like last week was. Neither one of us is Devin Jackson. That man is our producer for our Thursday show. He's 11-2-1 so far picking sports. When we hired him, we said, hey, what do you know about sports betting? Because we're going to use you a lot for producing these shows. Oh, I know a little bit about it. The guy's been a ringer the whole time, man.
I think he was trying to fake people out or something,
Yeah.
But it was a weird week. I did a lot better on my real wagers. My real virtual. We'll call them virtual wagers, since we're in a state that you can't bet just yet. But my real virtual wagers, though not the ones that I put on the big bucks, I did a little bit better.
We'll update our Big Bucks game on Thursday's show once we have the Monday night results in there too. But let's take a look at some of those results. Let's start with the college football results, just a couple of notable ones from this past week. LSU beat Central Michigan, easy cover. That was a 19-point spread at kickoff, ended up winning by 28. Interesting game because it got close to the spread at the end, even though LSU was in control the whole time. Nebraska only loses by a touchdown at Oklahoma. That was a 22-point spread. That was that was an interesting game too. Nebraska actually had a chance to win that game right to the end. Same thing with Florida. They were 14.5-point dogs, had a chance to win at the end. Penn State covers Ole Miss. Ole Miss scored 61 in 2.5 quarters, and then they kind of shut it down. But that's obviously a cover. And then another interesting one I threw up there was Fresno State taking out UCLA and really shaking things up. I don't think LSU fans can be comfortable with that result, but that was one Devin called, and Fresno State wins outright, really shaking up the Pac-12 race. And I think Oregon's the only unbeaten team left in the Pac-12. Jim, what sticks out to you here?
What sticks out to me is that LSU's loss to UCLA looks a lot worse than it did. It didn't look good 2 weeks ago, and now it looks even worse. So, you have to be concerned if you're an LSU fan. Although they did play a complete game this week. And don't say it's just because it was against Central Michigan. We talked about it last week that this was a Chippewa's team that is going to be perennially a really good team and ends up getting in a bowl game, ends up being a conference contender, and they're tough. So I think you and I both expected this to be a tighter game than it was, and so maybe LSU is kind of flipping the switch a little bit. But playing against the team that they gave up 600 and some odd yards passing to last year on the horizon, we'll see it. We'll learn a lot about LSU this week.
Yeah, these next 2 weeks tell us an awful lot about LSU at Mississippi State and then home for Auburn in a couple of weeks. It's interesting because we got after Ed Ogeron pretty hard the first couple of weeks because it looked like LSU was sleepwalking and they had that loss to UCLA. So I will give the man some credit. He went up tempo. He ordered his offensive coaches, I want tempo on offense. They did it and it worked. I think whatever metric LSU uses internally for explosive plays, I don't know if it's 20-yard rushes and 25-yard passes or whatever it was. They said this morning they had 12 of them, which is more than they had in the first two games combined. And so obviously, Central Michigan, not the best defensive team in the country or anything, but neither was McNeese State, and they didn't have any explosive plays against McNeese State. So something was different, and they were able to really sort of force the action with tempo, and you could see it right on that first drive. Went down the field and scored in 6 plays, then got the scoop and score. Andre Anthony, who unfortunately tore up his knee and is out for the season later in the game, but he had the scoop and score. It was 14-0, and for all intents and purposes, the game was over from a straight-up perspective at that point. But easily the most impressive performance of the season for LSU in 3 weeks. But like you say, they got to go to Starkville next week, so we'll see.
They do. And, Zach, one other thing before we move on is, Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin has things rolling over there. You have to think that if the goal was to score 100 points in the game, that Ole Miss could have hit it easily. And look, Tulane's defense doesn't look outstanding by any stretch. We've seen what they've done their first 2 games, but they played. To me, Ole Miss looks better than Oklahoma.
Oklahoma only got 35 against Tulane, so I don't
think it's a stretch to say that. So this Ole Miss team. And I know it's early still, and we still need to see them play a legit team. But I think this Ole Miss team is for real.
Yeah, I think they're a top 10 team. I don't know if they're a playoff team. I don't know if they're going to beat an Alabama or a Georgia or maybe a Texas A&M. But we'll see. I think they pick off one of those 3 games, and they're in the top 10 and in a New Year's 6 type situation at the end of the year. I think they're that good. Let's move on to NFL results. Yeah, I'm sorry, Jim. Didn't mean to cut you off there, but here's what went on in the NFL yesterday, and of course we're going to talk about tonight's game is Packers and Lions here in a minute. But just a handful of interesting results. We had the Rams holding off the Colts. We put up Colts cover there at kickoff. That was Colts +4. I think it had been 3 most of the week, so a lot of people probably pushed there. In fact, the Colts, after Carson Wentz left the game, I think had the lead there for a little while in that game.
They did. Yeah. And then they had a little mess up there at the end, but they did have the lead for a little bit.
And so the Rams ended up winning that game, but the Colts get the cover. 49ers in kind of a slugfest in Philly. We knew that was going to be the case, but the 49ers ended up covering 3.5. Vegas, with the outright upset in Pittsburgh, 26-17, might have been the surprise of the week. Either that or that Sunday night game at the bottom, the Ravens getting the late fumble from Clyde Edwards-Helaire and getting the victory at the end. And then the afternoon window was stacked, by the way. That Cowboys-Chargers game, and really you could say the same thing for Titans-Seahawks. They were insane. The underdogs cover both of them, but there were various points, both from a straight up perspective and from a gambling perspective, where you didn't know what was going to go on. The Cowboys-Chargers, every time there was a big play, there was a flag. And so you could never totally be sure which team had the momentum because, and then they called Justin Herbert down once in a red zone situation when he wasn't down and he had thrown the ball away. And so they got backed way up. And it was just one of the craziest games you'll ever see.
Well, first off, I thought the officiating this weekend was absolutely atrocious in every game. I don't think I saw any game where I thought, you know what, those guys did a good job. And usually, I got to say, as of late, I've thought the refs, as the past couple of years, have done a better job. But for some reason, I don't know if they had some kind of weird conference call and they were like, look, if you blow on a quarterback, you're going to get a flag, or if some of them were letting them play in the defensive backfield. Some of them were being ticky-tack. I don't understand what the fallout. There was no consistency in officiating today in the NFL. And it really kind of affected some of these games. And you talk about the Herbert play. Now, for me, I had the Dallas and Tennessee money line, so it was just fine for me. But, overall, they have got to come together and get together and be consistent. And, the Ravens game was a little weird too. And but yeah, you got to feel for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Again, another game where I had the Ravens, so I'm not that upset about it. It ended up being I get three covers and a couple money lines off of some weird games. But yeah, from 3 o'clock on, Zach, it was an outstanding day of NFL football, and exciting is actually a better word because you never knew what was going to happen.
Yeah, to your point about the officiating, I tweeted something out. I retweeted it this morning. The taunting calls, just yesterday alone, there were 5, 6, 7, 8 taunting calls and these are 15-yard penalties that absolutely dramatically can affect games. And from a gambling perspective, I'm sorry, there's billions of dollars at stake on these games, billions. And we're giving guys 15-yard game-altering penalties for talking a little trash after a big play. This is football, guys. Let them talk.
Right.
Yeah, I get it if they're pushing and shoving or they're really, making gang signs or getting in somebody's face, but a little talk and you're getting a 15-yard penalty. What are we doing here? This is not what people want.
The problem, Zach, is that obviously anyone who's followed this knows that the NFL has made an initiative to stop this sort of thing in the league. And I get that. But each referee is interpreting these differently. And some of them are, if a guy stands up and flips the ball in the air, he's going to get a flag. Another one can bump a guy face to face if it's right after the play and in the spirit of the game, and that's okay. So, and I know there's no other way to do it but Judge McCall, but you have to find a way to be consistent, and you also have to figure out the whole integrity of the rule. What did you design the rule for? You don't want someone to jump up and pounce and stand over someone and throw the ball at him or whatever. I understand that we're trying to get a lot of that out of the game. At the same time, like you said, in the spirit of the game, a guy's going to get up and he made a play, and good for him. And let's don't go back to the no fun league thing. We got rid of that 20-something years ago. We tried that for a few years. We realized the fans don't want that. And we don't want someone standing in someone's face and standing over them, especially what I hate is the big sack when you're down 21 points and you're jumping around like you won the Super Bowl. You're losing, okay? But something like this, if he gets up, just jumps up and looks at, come on. Let's give him a break. But yeah, we've got to find a way to be consistent. No matter what you do, each crew has to find a way to be consistent. We can't see it all, real quick. The Saints game, I'm not usually one to have this thing about the refs, okay? Your team didn't lose because the refs made a bad call here or there 96% of the time. And the Saints didn't lose yesterday because the refs did what they did. But they were so quick to throw a flag for roughing the passer yesterday. It got to the point where it was obscene. And you look at a different game, I saw hits way worse than I saw in the Saints game that weren't flagged. So we got to figure this out.
Yeah, there has to be a line. We understand that. But I could be playing the Xbox, and if I make a big play, I'm going to stand up and go, yeah, that's right. we're flagging guys for doing that. I mean, like, you're competing and you're happy that you won on that play. Let them be excited. I mean, what are we doing here? You brought up a good point, though, Jim. I didn't even put the Saints on that graphic, which was a mistake. I meant to have them on there, but it was such a forgettable game for Saints fans. I mean, it was the opposite of the Packers game where they never had a chance. They had, what did they run, 7 plays in the first quarter and a half of the game, and by that time they're down 10-0, and then it was 17-0. I mean, at that point, the game was over because we saw what the downside is with Jameis Winston. We saw the upside in week 1. The downside is once he starts feeling like he has to force things because they're behind in the game or because he's under pressure, he starts forcing things, and then it just gets worse before it gets better. Really just a disaster from the Saints' perspective yesterday.
Well, interestingly enough, the haters that sent me all that mail in week 1 because I said I thought they would lose to the Packers, although I said they would cover the spread, it was reversed. This week, I said the Saints would slip by, even though I said if you don't pick them in a knockout pool, dangerous game, pick the Panthers with the spread. I didn't get any hate email after this one, but except for the people on social media who thought I was being a hater because of Jameis Winston, was awful. And I went through and found a nugget, and then we'll talk about more about this later, and I'll talk about it in my NFL picks column this week. But Jameis Winston's rating yesterday of, I believe it was in the ballpark of 28. It was either 27 point something or 28 point something. It was 10 points worse than Drew Brees had in any of his 231 starts as a Saint. So you can call me a hater all you want and say it's only week 2 and the offensive line played terrible, which they did. But for you to have a rating that low, you could literally take a snap and throw it straight in the turf, and your rating is somewhere along the lines of 33. So you did worse than if I would have played for the Saints yesterday. That's pretty bad.
Now, in Jameis Winston's defense, for as much as you can defend him, people say, well, why can't you just be a game manager? Don't force anything. Don't throw those picks. Just manage the game. They weren't running the ball. He had no time to throw. The defense was not getting off the field and getting the ball back to them. Like this was, you talk about a total team win. This was a total team loss. I mean, yes, Jameis deserves some blame, but there's plenty to go around there. So,
well, it was the exact reverse of the week before, right? I mean, the
right.
Saints just took the role of the Green Bay Packers. I mean, they didn't get the ball first. Carolina went on a long consuming drive. The Saints could never get in a flow of anything. The offensive line was very uncharacteristically awful. They didn't even try to run the ball like they did the week before. And I get Carolina's a better run defense. But when you abandon the run in the second quarter, the same thing that happened to Green Bay in week 1 is going to happen to the Saints in week 2. They got to figure that out because they're going up against a really good defense again next week.
Yeah, and we'll talk about next week in a minute. Let's look ahead to the end of week 2 in the NFL, though. Monday Night Football tonight, and we haven't talked a lot about it, even though this is our Monday show. It could potentially be one of the more lopsided Monday night games of the year. Could be. It's Detroit at Green Bay. The Packers, you have to know they've got to be ticked off to what happened to them against the Saints yesterday. The line, I actually believe, is 11.5. It was 12, but it's been coming back a little bit. If you can get it at 11, I think you're in a good spot. The total is 49, so not too terribly high. But I think both you and I have this in big bucks, and we both expect the Packers to bounce back this week.
We do, but what scares me is when it starts moving like that, it usually means that the big money is on Detroit. So that it does make me a little nervous there. And the big money usually knows what they're talking about. But, I think I'm not usually one to put a lot of emotions in picks. I don't mean personal emotions. I mean teams' emotions. But Green Bay has got something to prove. And Detroit, I still believe Detroit. Well, I thought before the season Detroit was the worst team in the league. I think the Jets are. But they're certainly in the bottom 3 or 4 in that ballpark. I think Green Bay is going to roll tonight. But I'm 7-1 this week with my picks against the spread. So
need this one.
It teeters in the balance. I'm either going to be on the plus side or the minus. So it's a big game for me.
So Green Bay minus 11 against Detroit. And the other problem in the NFL, like we saw with the Lions last week against the 49ers, a big spread like that, it's pretty hard to slam the back door. I mean, you can have a team get up by 17, 21 points, which by NFL standards is a blowout, and then one touchdown and an onside kick later, and you're in a heap of trouble if you're laying the points. So that one's interesting, but we'll see what happens. Before we go, let's take a quick look ahead to next week's lines too, which are out now. We'll start with college football, and LSU is laying 2.5, a slight favorite at Mississippi State. Have even seen some threes already here. These lines are from Caesar Sportsbook as of this morning, but you always got to look for line movement. And that's one thing. You talk about sharp money. Sometimes the sharp money will come in real early in the week because those professional bettors will see the line they want and they will hop on it before anybody else can force a line movement. So LSU minus 2.5. It's a little bit of a down week as far as college football matchups. We've had a lot of good ones so far this year. Notre Dame, Wisconsin, that's sort of the Fox big noon game. Wisconsin's a 5.5-point favorite. Texas A&M, Arkansas are playing at Jerry World outside Dallas, and the Aggies are 5.5-point chalk. And then the SEC sort of game of the week, other than that, I guess, is Tennessee at Florida. Tennessee's a team. They lost to Pitt. That's a big spread. Florida minus 20. Florida coming off of a big game. Maybe a letdown spot for the Gators. That's an interesting one from a gambling perspective, even though we think the Gators would win straight up.
I'm just going to ask Devin what he thinks.
Yeah, ask Devin what he thinks and ride those coattails, man. What do we think about LSU minus 2.5 in Starkville?
Is there a tougher team to predict in college football than LSU? Really? I mean,
might be Mississippi State. Yeah.
Well, that's true too. And they lose to Memphis. So, I mean, who knows? The early thinking is I think that they're going to see film of that game they played against them last year a lot this week, or they're at least going to hear it. Whatever the total number was, 600 and some odd yards. They're going to hear it all week long. So I really like LSU here. I don't know that I'm going to play it because they've really confused me, and I'm going to probably lay off until I get a better feel for them. But if last year is any sort of gauge, it seemed that once they started figuring things out, they did get a lot better, although last year it kind of came a little bit later in the season. So I do like LSU here. I think they either win really big by like 20 or more, or they could lose.
Quite a range of possibilities.
It really is. I don't think there's any in between. In other words, I don't think it's going to be a nail biter. I don't think they're going to win by, they're not going to push the spread. They're not going to win by 1 or 2 against the spread. They're either going to win big against the spread, or they're going to just disappoint.
If it's a nail biter, it's because it's 45-41 and both teams are moving the ball up and down the field, and whoever has the ball last wins. That's the only way I could see it being that way.
But I think that, though. I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. So I'm not sure. I'm guessing the total is going to be well into the 60s. I think I'd like the under there. I haven't looked at the total yet, but I will as soon as we get off the air. As a matter of fact.
Yeah, I'll see if I can look that up actually real quick. Moving on to NFL next week, and again, Detroit and Green Bay to end week 2 tonight. But in week 3, Carolina and Houston is your Thursday night game. And the Panthers are minus 7.5, a big road favorite. Now, Houston, Tyrod Taylor's questionable to play, may not be able to play. And they've already said Deshaun Watson's not going to play. So, who the heck's going to play quarterback for the Texans? I don't know. But that's a concern on a Thursday night. And then Sunday, your big games, Chargers at Chiefs. Chiefs are just a tick under a touchdown going back home, coming off of that loss. Then you have the big game of the week, really, is the afternoon window, the Bucs and Rams, and that's a pick 'em, and it probably should be because you could go either way on that. And then Sunday night in Santa Clara, California, the 49ers are 4-point favorites against Green Bay. And there's a line. Green Bay playing Monday night probably will move a point or two depending on how the Packers look tonight.
Sure, and to me, obviously, the one that sticks out is Tampa Bay and the Rams. And, I'm saying all off-season long that I thought once the Rams got Matthew Stafford that they were the best team in the NFC. And I still believe that, although Tampa Bay has looked pretty darn good in its first 2 weeks. Now, granted, they played Dallas and Atlanta. But Atlanta made a nice run on them. I am not sold on this Tampa Bay defense. The points that they've given up against the Cowboys and Falcons in the first 2 games, yeah, they're good at stopping the run, but I'm not so sure that they're going to have an answer for Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, and whatever else Matthew Stafford decides to do. Now, the Rams don't have that great of a running game, so they're going to have to be one-dimensional. But I'm really looking forward to this game. I think the Rams have an excellent chance. People are going to just jump on Tampa Bay. I think this is going to be one of the Rams going to open as an underdog at home by the time the game comes in. You talk about the sharp line. Real quick, the sharp line on early in the week and right before game time is when the sharp money comes in. So if you watch Wednesday evening through like Saturday afternoon or Saturday evening, how that line changes, that'll tell you what the public's doing. Yeah,
absolutely. And I to your point, I think the Rams opened as 1-point favorites yesterday, and that line's already moved down to a pick. Not a huge move in terms of, unless it's a 1-point game, you would get a push. But just to show you where the money's going, and it could end up, like you said, being the Rams as a couple-point home dog by the time that game kicks off. But certainly maybe up with Browns Chiefs from week 1, the game of the year so far in the NFL, just through 3 weeks. But that'll tell us a lot about the NFC race. By the way, the total for LSU Mississippi State is 57, so not really all that high.
Did you say 57? You cut out for me a little.
Yeah, 57.
Okay, well then I don't. So that seems like a trap. That seems like an automatic over. When anything seems like an automatic anything, I take the other way.
You got to be careful. We haven't been careful enough. We'll be back on Thursday. Devin Jackson will be here, and he'll tell you what's really going to happen. So that's the good news.
Well, that's true, but I can tell you right now that under will be in my big bucks pick. I'm just giving a little preview.
All right. Okay. So speaking of which, the rest of the week, fantasy roundup Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday evening. Myself and Spencer Urquhart will talk about fantasy football in the NFL and how to get ready for week 3, who our MVPs were for week 2. And then Thursday, we will have At the Book. Jim and I will be back along with Devin. We'll do our Big Bucks game. We'll do Cashing In with Carville. And we'll keep things rolling for the weekend to come. And then also don't forget, you can get all of our coverage. If you missed the shows live, you can certainly watch the replay. Sign up for the newsletter. That is the best way to get all of our information on bet.nola.com at any time. That newsletter, again, the sign-up link is at nola.com/odds. Put in your email, and you are entered for a $250 cash giveaway. It's as easy as that, nola.com/odds. All you got to do is enter an active email, accept those newsletters in your inbox every morning, which, listen, who wouldn't want that kind of information anyway, especially when Devin Jackson's picking winners at an 85% clip or whatever it is. I don't think he'll keep that up, but the man's on fire. Yeah, I'm signed up for the newsletter. I read Devin's picks. So stick with us all season long. Bet.nola.com, again, along in conjunction with Caesar Sportsbook. We're very excited for betting to start in the next couple of weeks. And in the meantime, we'll have everything you need here on Bet.nola.com. For Jim, I'm Zach. We'll see you next time.